Welcome to Turning Hard Times to Good Times. I'm your host, Jay Taylor, and I'm speaking to you from New York City on this, the second day of June, 2020. And I do want to thank all of you for listening to this show, and want to encourage you to send along your comments and questions, any remarks you might have about this show, to questionsfortaylor@gmail.com, questions4@gmail.com. We do want to thank our sponsors for making the show economically viable. This week's sponsors are RN Resources, Ely Gold Resources, Great Bear Resources, Hannon Metals, Irving Resources, Novo Resources, and Sitka Gold Corp. I've titled today's show The Path to Monetary Collapse. Alistair MacLeod and Corwin Coe of Sitka Gold Corp will be with us. Even before massive social unrest sprung up here all across the United States cities, Alistair MacLeod wrote on a couple of weeks back, he wrote, and I quote, "Few understand the seriousness of the economic and monetary situation, whether a V-shaped rapid return to normality or a more prolonged recovery phase. A liquidity crisis that developed in the U.S. money markets 5 months before COVID-19 hit America has been forgotten. Only a rising gold price stands testament to a deeper crisis of contracting bank credit, while central banks are trying to rescue the economy, fund government deficits, and keep the market bubble inflated. The next problem? A crisis in European banks, wholly unexpected by investors and depositors. Now, when lending risk is soaring, their financial condition is more fragile than before the Lehman crisis. Failures in the next few months are a near certainty, leading to a full-blown monetary and credit crisis which promises to undermine asset values, government funding, and fiat currencies themselves." End of quote. While the next major problem impacting the global financial system may well be a crisis in European banks, we'll certainly ask Alistair about that, the massive lawlessness and thuggery being undertaken by the same members of one political party in the United States who attempted a soft coup against the current president are now standing behind Antifa, that is launching a coordinated effort to overthrow the current United States government in a much harder coup. Strangely silent about the massive damage to our major cities, our former President Obama, and a host of other Democrats who are not so secretly in support of Antifa, that has now been labeled a domestic terrorist organization by the Trump administration. Regarding what is taking place now, the words of Cicero, written in 58 BC, come to mind in trying to understand. And I quote Cicero. He said, "A nation can survive its fools and even the ambitious, but it cannot survive treason from within. An enemy at the gates is less formidable, for he is known and carries his banner openly. But the traitor moves amongst those within the gate freely, his sly whispers rustling through all the alleys, heard in the very halls of government itself. For the traitors appear not a traitor. He speaks in accents familiar to his victims, and he wears their face in their arguments. He appeals to the baseness that lies deep in the hearts of man. He rots the souls of a nation. He works secretly and unknown in the night to undermine the pillars of the city. He infects the body politic so that it can no longer resist. A murder is less to fear. The traitor is the plague." End of quote. What I think is very clear is that we are living at a time when America, as we have known it, is being destroyed. The Antifa thugs have been denying the conservatives the right to speak on our university campuses over the past few years, and the destruction displayed at various campuses around the country since Trump was elected has been a prelude to the same activities that are destroying capital in our major cities. Sending rocks through windows and setting campus buildings on fire when conservatives sought to speak at Berkeley and other major campuses was simply the warm-up for what is being extended across the nation now. In attempting to live up to the name of this show, we seek to have guests who provide some insights into why things are changing as they are, as opposed to the propaganda that we are fed by a self-serving mass media. It may very well be that the independent voices like this one, as well as those of guests that I have on the show, will soon be shut down. Perhaps this program might have a little longer lifespan because its impact is not all that great, certainly not as much as the mainstream. But is it difficult to imagine, for example, if the Democrats gain the White House and both branches of the legislature, that Fox News and Fox Business channels won't be shut down by a sitting president, like, let's say, a Kamala Harris, while the Democrats' voices of propaganda at CNN and MSNBC will continue, then with a complete monopoly of the airwaves, not unlike the Soviet Union and all dictatorships of the past. With the First Amendment now disappearing rapidly, I don't see how we avoid seeing our beloved country spiral into a dictatorship. Perhaps I'm being too gloomy. I pray that I am. So we may be entering a very dark future as the sinful nature of humanity seems to be gaining the upper hand against the Declaration of Independence that said that we are all endowed by our Creator with certain inalienable rights, those being life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That was a statement that each of us are created uniquely by God with a purpose to serve each other by freely using our unique talents. And for a long time, our capitalist system worked pretty well until our government undermined our freedom by forcing us to use a counterfeit dollar that has increasingly obscured price discovery and markets that no longer work very well. Not only that, but by granting the right to print money, those closest to the government printing presses have been increasingly able to bastardize free markets by buying our government, basically buying privileges in our government and getting laws passed in their favor. And now those same interests have infiltrated our media for sure over the years, and our universities, sowing anti-constitutional propaganda that is now really bearing the evil fruit we are witnessing every evening across America as the sun goes down. How should we respond to the demolition of America? Without a doubt, we need to continue to speak truthfully, even if the terms that we speak about get us into trouble. If we believe them to be true, I think we owe it to ourselves and to those around us to speak truthfully. I have a pretty good idea when I'm not speaking what is politically correct, and I know what I have been saying so far today is certainly not politically correct. But more importantly, as a Christian, I am called to love my enemies, realizing that when these young criminals are running through the streets, killing and looting, that what is transpiring is not a problem of flesh and blood, but of the spirit. The solution to that spiritual problem are not more guns and bullets, but rather loving our enemies and doing good to those who try to hurt us. And of course, the only way to act in that unnatural way is to trust in the promises that we have received from our Creator. The pagans who are looting our stores and killing our policemen are spiritual enemies from within our country, just as those who were raising hell in Cicero's time. So this is nothing new in history. As Benjamin Weicker, professor at Franciscan University, explained on this show in the past, Christianity gained a foothold in the dying Roman Empire because Christians, in fact, loved their pagan enemies more than the pagans loved themselves. They loved them by doing good things to their enemies. So if we want to do our small part to make this a better world, we have to start by loving those that we come in contact with. Of course, to love and care for those around us, we need to take care of our health and our finances. And so even though gold is getting hit pretty hard today, it must be pointed out that exchanging the fraudulent fiat money into longer-term savings in gold is the most prudent thing that we can do. If you think that that's bad advice, well, consider the following performance of gold compared to the Dow Jones Industrial since this new century began. Gold has risen from $276 back in 2000, January 1st, 2000, to $1,738 earlier today. That's a 529% increase. The Dow Jones, by contrast, has risen from $17,510 to $25,558, a rise of just 46%. Gold bullion has even beaten Warren Buffett by a landslide since the new century began. Sure, gold can be volatile at times as measured in dollars, but the long-term trend retaining value to the most assets measured in fiat money is undeniable. On the other hand, gold shares have a lot of catching up to do. John Hathaway of the Sprott Gold Equity Fund recently was quoted as follows: "For whatever set of reasons, gold shares in relation to bullion are the cheapest they've been in 20 years in this business. What astonishes me," John said, "is I am an old value investor, is that so many companies are generating free cash flows, and it is not hard to find companies with free cash flow yields of 10% or better. One junior exploration company that I have high hopes for is Sitka Gold Corp. It's a stock that I personally own and have it as a recommendation in my newsletter. When we come back from our first commercial break, Corwin Coe, the CEO of Sitka, will join me to explain his company's progress on not one, but 3 different projects."